Welcome to Solutions, where listening will leave you inspired by solutions to issues you or others you know may be struggling with in the public education system today. I am Olivia Wall, and I am honored to welcome my guest today, Stephen Nunu. Let me tell you a little bit about Stephen. Stephen is an editor and journalist who's covered education for more than a decade. He has been a K through 12 editor for EdSurge and worked at eSchool News, The Journal, Q, and SmartBrief. It is my honor to welcome you as a guest on Solutions, Stephen. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Olivia.
I'm so excited. I kick off every episode by asking guests who an inspiring educator is from their life. Would you share with listeners?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I just heard it the other day in the Rebecca Macton podcast, and I was thinking about my own answer. And it's the answer that I give a lot, but it's a true answer. It's actually my mom. And our moms are obviously our first educators. They're the ones who teach us our first words. But my mom was actually my teacher for 3 years in high school. She taught the science research independent study program at my high school, and I took it. And my project was on second language acquisition. It was on English as a second language students and, culturally responsive teaching and how that helps students kind of learn English. I know, Olivia, you've taught something similar, so we definitely have some parallels. But she was a really great educator. She taught us, death by PowerPoint pretty early on, and how to give engaging presentations. Yeah. And it was a real trial by fire. I also had to write papers using the scientific method as a framework. All of these things that are were really, really helpful, not just in college, but also in my career. Yeah. So, that's probably what I'd say.
Awesome. I have been following your work for a very long time. You are one of my favorite writers when it comes to education writing and research. And I feel like the issue that I'm thrilled to have you speak to today is around teacher shortage, stresses, strains, just in general in the teacher profession. That's the issue I'm calling out. I could say burnout, demoralization. That's been a term we're hearing a lot. But you recently just started the Warning Bell newsletter. And it's a way for you to catalog for us all that's going on with the teacher shortage, and it's offering me a lot of hope and perspective for a trajectory shift. And that's why I am thrilled to have you as a guest. So I'd love to start our conversation for listeners to hear why you started the Warning Bell newsletter and what your intention is with it.
Yeah, sometimes I ask myself the same questions. It's a Substack newsletter. Yeah. And it's pretty new. It's been around for less than a month, and I started it after EWA, which is the Education Writers Association conference, which is always a really great gathering of my favorite education writers and journalists, and also thought leaders. Randi Weingarten was there, and Brekkie Pringle, both from the two largest unions. So it's really bringing together a lot of voices to talk about education problems and solutions. But to speak to your question, teacher shortages and the challenges on the teaching profession is something that I covered quite a bit at EdSurge, both in my writing and also when I was editing essays and op-eds and opinion pieces from teachers themselves. Yeah. And it was something that I really enjoyed doing. I since have moved on to Edutopia, where I'm also editing educators and I'm doing some writing. But Edutopia is a bit different, as I'm sure everybody listening to this knows. Edutopia is extremely solutions focused. I love Edutopia. There's really no place like it on the internet. So when Edutopia covers a problem, we're really covering the solution to the problem. We're really covering what you can do about it. And, there's something like the problems in teaching, there are some intractable problems here, and that's a little bit more difficult to cover from an Edutopia frame. So Warning Bell is kind of the other side of journalism, which is kind of pointing out problems and, why they need to be solved, but saying we don't always have all the answers. It's something that I missed covering from EdSurge, and I thought, I wasn't really seeing it covered as much as it could have been.
Yeah.
One thing that I always thought, I talked to a lot of teachers, especially when I was at EdSurge. I mean, even now. But one thing that I noticed when I talk to teachers is, and I read their comments on social media, they don't always feel heard. I mean, they in fact, they feel unheard
Yeah.
sometimes. They don't feel like anyone listens to them. And they don't feel like they deserve to be punching bags. And one thing they don't see is a supportive media ecosystem. They see a lot of both sidesism in journalism, and the story becomes kind of about the culture wars or something, and teachers kind of feel at the bottom of the totem pole there. They don't feel like anyone has their back, and they don't necessarily always trust the media, and they don't always trust to see their stories and their problems fairly represented there. I do definitely want to use Warning Bell to cover solutions to the teaching crisis, but I also want to spell out the problems, because validation it's very important. And also this lets me be, a little bit more opinionated than maybe I would get to be when I write for traditional media outlets.
It's phenomenal. And I big heart to Edutopia. I follow and tag them in many a post of mine on social. But I do know you did voluminous research with EdSurge around the teaching shortage, and you did a lot of interviews with teachers, and they were former teachers that had recently left the classroom. So I'd love for listeners to also understand, what did those conversations illuminate for you? Because these are people that are leaving a profession that they loved dearly. It just was a breaking point. So please share what you got from those conversations.
Yeah, so that was a story that we got a grant to do. Me and another reporter, Emily Tate Sullivan, got grants to do really big stories, which is something that we don't always have time for, because EdSurge is a really small newsroom. And so this kind of gave us a chance to do something, and we decided that we wanted to focus in on the teaching profession, because usually we focus in on students when we do these big projects, and we decided to do something a little bit different this time. And Emily focused in on teachers working second jobs, and teacher pay. And I decided to focus in on, the stress that the pandemic was putting on teachers. So I didn't really know when I started talking to teachers, I didn't really know what the topic was going to be. But I contacted some people, including a woman named Daphne Gomez, who runs she'd be great to have on the podcast too if you haven't had her on. She runs Teacher Career Coach, which helps teachers transition to a new career after teaching. She's a former teacher who now does consulting. So like you, Olivia. So she connected me with a ton of really great teachers, and when I spoke to them, they would say the same things over and over. And I wasn't trying to prod these answers out of them, but they would tell me that they were losing, before they left the classroom, they had lost sleep, they were having panic attacks, they, were having a lot of mental health issues, problems at home, and that they were working, around the clock for a job that they really felt like did not love them back.
Yeah.
Didn't support them back. And to me, that was, really disheartening. But I mean, there was definitely a common thread running through them. So when I started researching it, and I really saw the stress that teaching was taking on people, and also on the profession and how it's really not systemically designed to weather such, extreme pressure
No.
being put on it, and that it's leading to a crisis point. I mean, that was a real wake up call.
Yeah.
Also, these stories were some of the most popular on EdSurge. Whenever we posted about demoralization, whenever we posted about teachers that were having a hard time, I got a lot of emails. I got a lot of comments on social media that, I really took to heart, because I mean, teachers were like responding, and they were responding pretty forcefully. This was an issue that they cared about a lot. They want to feel like somebody is taking them
Yeah.
seriously and recognizing the problems that they're having. They don't always have solutions themselves, but they, like I said earlier, they need to feel heard. Those were a few of the things that I found in that article, which you can read on New Republic and EdSurge. I think it's called like the mental health crisis that's causing teachers to quit.
Yeah, I'll make sure to include links in the show notes to all of the mentions you're putting out there. It's powerful. And you did already speak a bit to the panel at EWA, the Education Writers Association, that you participated in. What were the prominent reasons, or were they the same, that came up at that panel? And I'd also really love you to speak to the solutions that some of the presenters came up with. Were the reasons similar to your research with EdSurge?
Yeah, no, that was a great panel. I actually I hosted a different panel. I hosted one on artificial intelligence. This was a panel that I attended, and there was a teacher, there was Becky Pringle, and there was an economist from the Economic Policy Institute on the panel, and I think it was hosted by Elia Wong at USA Today. And I thought it was just a really fascinating look into teacher shortages. So, but first, I kind of wanted to define what a teacher shortage is,
Please.
because there's no one to teach this class. So kids are just sitting around in endless study halls or auditoriums. I think that that's maybe the first thing that we think of when we think of a teacher shortage. For sure, we are seeing some of that, and the panel mentioned that, but they said that it's not the only thing, which I thought was really interesting.
It is.
The pandemic just put enormous strain on the teaching profession, which was already in trouble. And it looks like really different things depending on the school and the district. But for some context, Linda Darling Hammond's research nonprofit, the Learning Policy Institute, has been sort of like a Cassandra here. She's been warning about the potential for really big shortages since like 2016.
Yeah.
I think she did a really big paper on it. And unfortunately, those things weren't solved very speedily. They're very difficult to solve, and they were intensified by the pandemic. But like I said, teacher shortages don't look the same everywhere, but there are some commonalities.
Okay.
In some parts of the country, that means that there are just like a lot of job vacancies, or vacancies in specific subjects like STEM, like you can't find a chemistry teacher. It might look like, you're not able to find enough substitute teachers, especially long-term ones, so that when teachers go on maternity leave, full-time teachers are kind of pulled away from their classes to take over, and that's really unsustainable. And it could also be like underqualified teachers being hired to close gaps. And what we know from the research is that students learn best when there is a really high quality, experienced teacher in the classroom who is actively honing their craft. And we know that these shortages impact, however they look, we know that they impact high poverty schools and schools that serve underrepresented groups and students of color. We know it impacts them the most.
Yes.
So for a while, there was like a bit of a debate about whether the pandemic teacher shortage was even real, or if it was like this ginned up melodrama, from educators who were stressed out and they were just venting, and that, everybody needs a job, so they're not really going to leave. It wouldn't be as bad as it was expected, but we now know that that's categorically false. We now know that there definitely is a teacher shortage, and it's very real. There's a brand new analysis from Chalkbeat's Matt Barnum,
Mhm.
who is certainly not a jump to conclusions. kind of journalist by any stretch, but he found that in all 15 states that he looked at, more teachers are exiting the classroom now compared to before the pandemic. And in Texas, each year, about 10% of the teacher workforce would leave in any given year. Now it's 13.4%. And that's really big, and it's really concerning. And there's similar federal jobs data that shows that, local education payrolls are down like 250,000 jobs compared with pre-COVID levels, and there are something like 300,000 job openings. So, I mean, the data is definitely supporting this.
It is a quote directly from one of your pieces. I'm going to read it. The average weekly wages of public school teachers, adjusted only for inflation, increased just $29 from 1996 to 2021, from $1,319 to $1,348 in 2021 dollars. In contrast, inflation-adjusted weekly wages of other college graduates rose from $1,564 to $2,009 over the same period, which is a $445 increase. I mean, Stephen, teachers are broke. They are working second, third jobs. It's not sustainable to be able to support a family and do this profession. And where I live, many teachers cannot afford to buy a home within the school district that they are teaching in. That is a shame. It's just, thank goodness we're raising our sons to understand that teaching is the profession that creates other professions. And I know that's cliche, but my boys believe that in their heart and soul. And they think it's a crime what educators are paid. It's just, it's an injustice. So I think that quote really, really resonated with me. It's scary that the amount teachers are paid is so low.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that point was made at the panel too, and it's something I really agree with. Teachers are leaving for all sorts of reasons, but I mean, there's, like you said, there's a big caveat to that. Pay is by far and away the biggest reason, and it's far ahead of everything else. Teachers are leaving because they're underpaid. They can't afford to stay in the classroom when you make about 24% less than going into a different job that requires the same education you paid for, the same amount of student debt you have, but you can make 24% more. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah.
I mean, teachers definitely, they get some time off during the summer, and they get a pension. But I mean, this is not the kind of perks that you would expect to see in a job that pays you 24% less than your peers.
No, and in the amount, what people also don't understand that I think we do in being connected to educators and being teachers is that the amount of priming and planning work that happens outside of the walls or of the building is imperative in order to make the teaching inside the classroom run smoothly. Teachers are not planning curricula once they're with children. It's all of the outside time spent planning and steeping kids in what they're going to need. So I think that's also not considered, the hours spent outside of the classroom. What suggestions came up from the panel when you were listening in?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the teacher pipeline is woefully neglected. Students are seeing what the profession looks like. They see the pay, they see the stress, they see the instability, and they don't want any part of it. And when they do, they don't get enough support in those pivotal first years, and they leave the profession. Some of them do come back, and some of them don't. So that's a major problem, and it's definitely a place to start. Mm-hmm. We know that something like 40% of teachers leave within the first 5 years, and that attrition rate is kind of baked into the teaching profession. They account for it, but I mean, starting there. Recruiting more students of color to be teachers. I mean, these are really good suggestions. I've seen really, really good suggestions in how to keep early career teachers in the classroom, teacher residency programs, teacher apprenticeship programs, which kind of it's kind of like you're a junior teacher and you're paired with a senior teacher, and so your teaching is, it's kind of like being a junior doctor or
Yeah.
something before you kind of graduate. These are things that help. You're not just throwing teachers from the frying pan into the fire. I mean, you're giving them some supports, and you're making them see that there might be a future in teaching, where they feel supported and they don't feel like the weight of the world is completely on their shoulders. But with that said, I don't see a long-term solution that doesn't involve a bucket of cash dropped at their feet.
Yeah.
It's really tough these days, as I'm sure everybody knows, to get the political will to do anything. But I'm really hoping perhaps we can make an exception for this, because there will be really big impacts if the teaching shortage just is allowed to continue unchecked like this. They talked a bit about collective bargaining, how, teachers feel more empowered in states that have strong collective bargaining. Not every state lets teachers strike. Not every state lets, teachers really sit and have power at that bargaining table. So those states that do are obviously going to see a bit better returns. They also talked about, I thought this was really interesting, community schools that offer wraparound supports. We often think about that as being something that benefits students the most, and it does. But it has spillover effects into teachers, because teachers are not counselors. They are not, mental health professionals, and, they are not, community advocates. And as you mentioned, they're already working so hard to plan their lessons. I mean, to expect them to take on extra duties because they're kind of the last line of defense is also something that's very stressful for teachers. So in schools that create, this overall community with a lot of supports for students, I mean, that kind of takes a little bit more of the pressure off teachers too.
Yeah, I was just working with teachers this past week, and a high school team that's doing a lot of work with humanities. And in general, we were having this conversation. We watched this brilliant video that was put out by Expeditionary Learning, EL Education. And a lot of the premise of the public education through that lens is growing or nurturing better humans that will be the historians, the mathematicians, the social scientists, the readers, the writers that we want to take care of us in the universe. And a big part of that is helping them understand the why as students of what the work in school is ending up going to serve in with their future. And we talked a lot about the community, not just being the community schools to support mental health, but also community connections, having mentors come in from the community. And one teacher I was speaking with wants to try to get kids to look at different declarations of independence from all over the world in different time periods, and then look at human rights violations and go directly to the UN, because they are in the process of creating a new human rights declaration. She wants her students to be able to offer insight and ideas. And so I think when we're talking about connection, it's got to be even bigger than the community. It's how are we giving our kids authentic audiences to see that their voices are going to be powerful. And I think that at least is inspiring for educators to know that there's an open door policy, community can come in, we can go out, and it's a lot of work to build those connections, but it's tremendous for the sustainability of our children becoming better humans. You've also done tons of coverage on the culture wars, book bans, LGBTQIA plus, community and rights. And one quote also, it really struck me. Here's where it gets interesting, or at least telling. Half the teachers surveyed say they limit discussions about political or social issues because they're not sure school leaders would have their back if parents complained. I've lived this. Also, 36% say they're afraid of verbal or physical confrontations with parents, and 32% say they're afraid of losing their job or teaching license. I mean, Stephen, what has your research shown of how we can help support teachers with these issues, because they're so real?
Yeah, yeah, they are, and to go back what you were saying just before, that sounds like a really amazing community project, and those are the kinds of things that you get when experienced teachers stick around. They care about their
Yeah.
craft. I mean, you don't get that from a fly by night substitute, who's doing their best, of course, but I mean, is in and out of the classroom, or the students are spending too much time in the auditorium. You get that when dedicated teachers stick around and they want to create amazing projects like that, and the students see the value
Mhm.
of school. And so that really we're missing things like that, like we're missing stories like the ones that you were saying, when the teacher shortage, means that there are fewer of those to talk about. But in terms of the culture wars, I mean, where to start? It reminds me of Sir Ken Robinson,
Yeah.
the late Sir Ken Robinson. He once told me in an interview that. It was really interesting. He said that to students, teachers are the education system as far as they're concerned. And that gives them like a tremendous influence in how education is actually performed. And I always really like that quote. But in the past year or so, I've been reflecting about that. And what I've come to realize is that just means that the buck stops with teachers, because there's nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
And what that often means is there's nowhere else to punch down. Congress can kind of blame the states can blame the districts can blame the superintendents or the principals, and then everybody can blame the teachers. But who do the teachers blame? Like they don't want to blame anyone. They don't have anyone to scapegoat. They love their students.
Yeah.
And the fact that they spend hundreds of dollars of their own money each year to outfit their schools, and they work incredibly hard hours, like you were talking about before, can easily attest to that.
Mhm.
I mean, the cascade of, systemic failures, it stops with teachers, and teachers are left shouldering way too much of like this broken education system that starts at the top with a lot of, see no evil, speak no evil monkeys.
Mhm.
So of course they're leaving,
Yeah.
wouldn't you? But I mean, when it comes to the culture wars, I mean, they don't, all of that's to say is they don't feel that anyone's going to have their
Yeah.
back. So of course they're self-censoring because they don't feel, parents are going to have their back. They don't feel their principal or their superintendent is going to have their back. I mean, if they're lucky, they have a union that will. But it's not enough support. So teachers are starting to see the writing on the wall, and they're starting to let themselves get intimidated by the culture wars, because there is this pervasive belief that teachers are public servants, and they are, and that they don't get the same freedom of speech that maybe I do as a journalist, because they are working for the state and they do have a curriculum, and that's true. But I mean, this culture war is an attempt to silence them even further. It's an attempt to kind of take really necessary topics, like racism and LGBTQ rights, out of the classroom, out of discussion. Those are no longer topics that can even be broached by teachers, and that's really damaging too. That's damaging for students, and it's also damaging for teachers. I mean, nobody wants to feel like they're walking on eggshells. And every word that they're saying is under a microscope.
Yeah. I remember one of my very first interviews was with Morgan Jackson. I think it's season 1, episode 7, I'm pretty sure. And she was presenting on a panel at NCTE, and I was lucky enough, it was during COVID, I was lucky enough to join one of her breakout groups. And then I asked her to be a guest. And what she said to me, it still just bounces around in my head all the time when I'm walking through classrooms and buildings. When you remove a book from a classroom, when you censor or don't disclose the full history of what has evolved and happened, You are saying to that student, you're saying to that teacher that it has experienced that, whatever is in that book or that content, that they are not welcome. And that's terrifying on many levels. And here's the other big conundrum. We have a lot of disengaged students in high schools, especially. I see it. The way we get kids engaged is through provocative, engaging discourse. And I think something one of my mentors, Chris Tavani, has taught and instilled within me is that the way we are going to help our students learn how to think, not what to think, is by encouraging them with these bigger essential questions that they can circle back to, and we can study, we can expose them to a myriad of texts. Our kids should never know our political viewpoint. That's not our responsibility as teachers, but it is our responsibility to offer all sides of an argument so they can choose where they stand and voice their opinion. We don't want kids that cannot speak up and advocate for themselves. Our world will not be better if that's the case. So that idea of quelling provocative or compelling topics is really short-sighted as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, yeah, no, and it's definitely going to I mean, these are the people that have to be teachers themselves someday, the students. So, I mean, there's definitely compounding effects, but I mean, this race to demonize teachers and intimidate them into even having these conversations, or letting students drive the conversations. That's when students, like you were saying, that's when students get most invested in their learning. I mean, when they can talk about things that impact them, and they see the news. I mean, they follow social media. They see what's going on in the world, and if they're disengaged, I mean, who can blame them too? I mean, they're discouraged from talking about it at school. I mean, it really is really difficult, and I wish I had better solutions for teachers who are stuck in this culture war morass, other than to fight back. I mean, because they're dealing with so much already, and I would never ask a teacher, to put their job on the line, but to any ability that they have to kind of fight back a little bit when it comes to these culture wars, and have the difficult conversations anyway, and of course in a respectful way. It can only help students.
Yeah, it can only help. And I am interested to hear from you before we wrap our conversation. What are you seeing research wise is the trend moving forward in the future? Are you seeing a positive trend or an uptick in students or teacher education programs realizing like we've got to do something here? Is there any research that speaks to that?
I'm not really sure. I am heartened to see way more of these teacher residency programs, way more of these programs that are taking younger teachers under their wing and doing teacher education differently. Because I think that both research and common sense will tell you, just the data will tell you that what we're doing now is not
No.
working. And so I really think that changing the way that we educate tomorrow's teachers will be really essential to fighting this, and that is going to require students to learn how to be teachers in a different way.
Yeah.
And I think that there's it's kind of like the pandemic, where it's an inflection point where there's a chance to do things really differently. And that can also be exciting as people kind of start to dream what that can look like, and potential teachers get options in how they want to learn how to be teachers. So I think that is something that I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on. It's definitely something that I want to write more about in the coming months.
I know your writing has inspired me for a long time, and I want listeners to be able to connect with you and support you and your research. So, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Olivia. That's really kind of you. The site is called Warning Bell, and it's located at warningbell.substack.com. Subscribing would be super helpful. You can also send me an email on there, or get in touch, send me a message. I love to hear from readers. That's really right now the best way. And definitely read my stories when you see them on Edutopia.
Indeed, indeed. And I will make sure to put those details in the show notes as well. I often share your writing because it's so matter of fact. It's steeped with relevant current research, and it is solutions based when it can be. I think that having the notion that there's always a solution is it's not realistic either. And at some points, we need to just linger and acknowledge there are a lot of issues going on. Before I have you wrap with a call to action, I'd like to read a quote that was a final thought you left readers with. I'll leave you with one final thought. Over the years, I've observed many, many teachers hesitate to complain about the very real problems in their profession as they talk earnestly about loving their students and wanting to love their jobs. It's an unfortunate and unconscionable reality that too often their jobs simply do not love them back. So, Stephen, let's end our conversation with some love for teachers and what is our call to action?
Yeah, the call to action, I think, is just support teachers, believe teachers. When you can give them the benefit of the doubt, your own kids' teachers, your friends and family who are teachers, give them the benefit of the doubt in general. I mean, teachers are not masterminding this, manipulative strategy to kind of, hoodwink everybody. I mean, they're just sharing really difficult problems that are happening in their profession. To the extent that we can all give them a little bit more grace, I mean, I think is a really great call to action. And if you are a teacher, I mean, let go of, feel free to let go of this guilt that you might be carrying around, and realize that even if you leave the classroom, you'll always be a teacher, and keep teaching in ways that are meaningful to you, however that looks. I think that's a really powerful message, or I hope it is, for teachers.
It is indeed. And I also appreciate with Warning Bell that you put it right out there. If there are conversations teachers want to have for you or issues that they would like you to highlight, that they should get in touch. And so I think that open communication line, and Stephen, you're a voice of hope. You're a voice of realism. And I adore that you're an advocate for us as educators. And I'm honored to have had you as a guest on Scholutions. Thank you so much for your important work.
Oh, thank you for having me, Olivia. This was great.
Awesome. Take care. Scholutions is a podcast created, produced, and edited by me, Olivia Wall. Special thanks to my guest, Stephen Nunu. Also, a big thank you to my older son, Benjamin, who created the music that's playing in the background. I would love for you to share the podcast far and wide. Leave a review, subscribe on YouTube, and follow us on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and Facebook at Scholutions Podcast. If you'd like to become a Scholutions sponsor or share episode ideas, leave me a SpeakPipe voice memo at my website, oliviawall.com/podcast, or connect via email at scholutionspodcast@gmail.com. Please keep listening. Let's continue finding inspiration together.